Hi, my name is Arini Vlotman. I hail from Johannesburg, South Africa, and I'm really excited to be speaking today on adminchat. Mostly because I've used this forum so many times, I've gotten so many good tips, so much of good advice from all the people that have taken the time to put videos up there for people like me. So I'm glad that I can do something in return. And the topic that I chose for today's admin chat was anxiety, but specifically how to make your anxiety work for you as opposed to having it control your life. I suffered from anxiety for very many years, and it reached a point where all my decisions were based on my anxiety levels. So I had a little gauge, depending green, orange, red, and if it was in the red, I would make decisions, snap decisions that were really bad, and that turned out to have really bad consequences. Until I reached a stage where I decided that enough was enough, and I needed to do something about it. So, just some backstory. I was diagnosed with anxiety when I was 16 years old. I was in my final year of school, high school, standard 12 or standard 10 or grade 12 as we know it here. And there was a lot of pressure from teachers, pressure from parents, pressure from universities, pressure from everywhere basically. And I could feel that pressure as physical symptoms in my body. At the time I didn't know that I was experiencing anxiety or that I was suffering from anxiety. I would feel, and I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this have felt the same thing. Maybe your symptoms are similar to mine, but I would feel headachy. I would have this buzzing in my ears. My ears would get hot, like really, really hot, almost like embarrassment, but not quite. My chest would get either tight, so tight that I felt constricted and I couldn't breathe, or I'd get these sharp shooting pains, which would cause me even more panic and worry and anxiety. Because I mean, which 16-year-old suffers from something like this? Anyway, I was in school when I had my first anxiety attack, and my friends were there and they helped me. I went home. My mother took me to the doctor, and he listened to my story and he listened to my symptoms, and he gave me something for heartburn. Um, so I went home and I took my heartburn medication at 16 years old. And now that I'm 35 and I've experienced heartburn a number of times, let me tell you that anxiety and heartburn do not feel the same. I literally felt like I was dying. I thought that if I was any older, I'm sure my life would have been flashing before my eyes. But that's what anxiety meant to me. It felt like I was going to die. And that is not a good feeling. It is incredibly scary in itself. And when you look at the reasons that my anxiety was flaring up, or why I was experiencing anxiety, it makes no sense now, because I think to myself, surely I could have controlled it. Surely I should have done something. I could have done something. But I didn't, because I didn't even know I had anxiety. A couple months down the line, I had my second and my third attack. Eventually, I ended up in hospital. I went to see a psychologist who saw me twice, I think, diagnosed me with moderate to severe anxiety, and we talked it out, and off I went, wrote my exams, and started my life. And what I did not know at the time, that was just the tip of the iceberg for me. Going into the workplace from school to tertiary to the workplace, it's huge jumps, monumental levels, and you are given so much of accountability and responsibility that as a teenager you don't fully understand it until you reach the workplace, and there's no teacher to bail you out. There's no friend sitting next to you to help you out with essay answers, or there's no mum to go home to ask advice from. And back when I was a teenager, we didn't really have the internet, we didn't have cell phones, we had to go to the library, and then you go into the working place and you don't know what a computer really is or how to use email, and you're forced to function on a much higher level than you used to. So after many years, it was like 4 or 5 years of this building anxiety and this constant worry. And that's the thing. There's a difference between stress and anxiety. Stress is usually short flares or short periods of something that prompts your stress. So it could be your commute every day to work and back. Sitting in traffic is stressful, but once you get out of the car, it kind of ebbs away and you carry on with your day until you get back in, right? Or you're dealing with a really big upcoming project, you've got a deadline looming, you know you need to get this out, you work, you deal with your stress as much as possible, your deadline is over, you move on. Anxiety is the constant feeling of worry. It's a constant feeling of there's something is bothering you. You don't even know what it is half the time. You wake up, well, I used to wake up in the middle of the night worried about something, but I just didn't know what I was worried about. I would have problems falling off to sleep. I would have problems focusing on a task. I'm an avid reader and I would have to read the same page over and over and over because I found my mind drifting into my anxiety zone. And if I look at it now, I can actually picture in my mind, in my head, what my anxiety looks like. And if you've watched the movie Gremlins, it's basically all these tiny little monsters, some small, some big, but there's lots of them zooming around me. Some of them are nipping, some are harder than others, some are clawing on me, some are climbing up me to the top of my head, some are dropping away, but they're always there and they cloud me. It's literally like they block out anything external from coming in. And that feeling was constantly with me. I used to have headaches. I used to feel sick to my tummy, like I would throw up. I would feel either I'd range from nausea to actual distaste, like I had a bad feeling in my mouth constantly. And what I realized was I needed help. I needed to do something. And the turning point for me was when I started becoming a bad performer. So I was always a good performer, sometimes average, depending on what I was actually doing. But I knew that my output was pretty good and that I could be relied on and I was good at my job. But my anxiety started stopping that from happening, and I saw a downward slump in my work. And what does that mean? People stop trusting you. I mean, you're working with high-level executives, and if they stop trusting you, it's very hard to build your credibility again. And I refused to let that happen. So I did a lot of research. I went to see a coach and mentor. And what I realized was that on some levels, my anxiety or that little bit of control issue that I had could work for me. Firstly, I needed to know what my triggers were. So what prompts my anxiety, right? And what about a situation causes me anxiety? One was if something was out of my control. So you need to establish what is in or out of your control. And even if it's in your control, how much control do you actually have, right? In a corporate space or in any working space, there's only so much that you can do before you have to rely on somebody else to help you, right? You're working with a team, you have a project, you've got to send out a report, somebody needs to give feedback, it needs to come back, there's a time limit, there's quality, there are people that are depending on you, there's so many aspects that go into a single task or job function that you can't control. So what I learned was, and I know a lot of people do this, but within the EA space, a lot of the work that you do comes up, right? You have your monthlies, your annual, quarterlies, whatever the case is. But a lot of the stuff that you deal with is day-to-day stuff. So I tried to preempt as much as I could. And that was difficult at first because how do you know in a month some crisis is going to happen? But what I started doing was I started putting together a log of certain things that would happen really quickly. And what did I do in that instance? Who could I call on? What was the turnaround time? For example, if my executive was traveling and somebody needed something from him urgently, I needed to manage somebody's expectations. So, okay, Mr. Joe Soap has gone to the UK for 2 weeks. I'm unable to get a hold of him until 8 o'clock tonight, which is 6 hours from now, and blah 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 blah. So in those 6 hours, there's nothing that I can do. If I've told the person that I can't get this really urgent thing to you in within the next 6 hours, it's not going to happen. There's nothing that I can do about it. What I can do is I can make sure that I WhatsApp my boss, and I email my boss, and I voicemail my boss, and I try and get a hold of him and let him know that there's something really urgent that needs his attention. Or I could try to go to somebody else, but that's not always the case. So that's an example of something that I would look at. Another thing is I would have to decide, and this was very difficult for me, and I don't know if it is for most PAs or some PAs, but I was functioning in a silo, right? You have your executives, you have your team, but you are the only person, or you are maybe one of two people that are doing this job for a number of people. And it becomes difficult because a lot of people come to you for things that they are unable to do themselves. And if you are the only one that can do it, there's nobody else to rely on. So what I started doing is I started meeting up with people that I could trust in my team and saying, listen, if I'm not here, if I'm off sick, or if I'm on leave, or if I'm in training, or if I'm in a meeting, can I ask you to please do this for me? And it goes back to the control issue where I was hesitant, and I also didn't want to seem incompetent or inept, but I needed to trust in my team, and I needed to show them that I was willing to do a lot to make sure that my job was fulfilled, and that I was the best person that they could rely on, even if I wasn't doing it myself. So I approached them, and I've done this ever since, and I've established trust with them. And in the same way, they know that they can come to me if they are in a bind. And I wouldn't say, well, that's not my job, or that's not part of my job description. I would do it for them because that's what you do in a team. You trust each other, and it's give and take. So I established control, I managed expectations. I learned to trust others, and as I became more senior, I learned to delegate, whether it was downwards, sideways or upwards. I learned to do that because it's something that you have to do. You can't do everything alone. You try, but you just can't. And I did not want to spend so many sleepless nights worrying about something that I could have prevented had I planned it far enough ahead. So if I was going on, something that I would never do is I wouldn't go on leave, because what if something goes wrong when I'm not there? Or what if something goes wrong and I'm not there and somebody else fixes it and they realize that they didn't need me there in the first place? Things like that. And that was my own self-esteem issues on one hand. So when I learned to trust myself and the people around me more, I learned to control it. So I started, if I was going to take a week or two worth of leave, I would plan it at least a month in advance. I would let everybody know. I would make sure that everything that I could possibly do in advance would be done. I would then, if I wasn't physically able to do it before, I would then go to people, and specific people, and ask them to help me out. Or I would say, I'm sorry, but I can only do this when I get back. And I was honest about it. I really, really was, because if I'm not honest, I'm hiding things. And that's another thing about anxiety, right? It creeps up at the most inopportune moments. And it's like that, the worst thing that anybody can ever say to you is, we need to have a talk. Oh, worst words ever for somebody who has anxiety to feel. So I would make sure that when somebody said that to me, I would make sure that there was nothing that they needed to talk to me about that was bad. So that was another thing that I did. I preempted anything that needed to happen. And then I had to sit down and be very, very honest with myself. So there are some aspects of the job that I did not like and that I wasn't very good at, for various reasons, whatever it was. If I had to put together a quarterly report and get figures from a number of people over different currencies in different parts of the world, different timelines, whatever the case is, over sensitive issues. Putting that together is a nightmare, and people are sometimes not respectful of deadlines. We all know this, right? So I knew it was due in a month, and I would tense up, and my shoulders would stiffen, and my hair actually started falling out. And in anticipation of the project that I didn't like to do, I would get anxious and worried and stressed. So that's how high my anxiety levels were. I learned that, okay, I don't like this. I'm not very good at it. What can I do to become better at this role? Firstly, it's acceptance. I have to accept that that's what I need to do. I can't always do the nice, fun, glamorous, stimulating, challenging things in my role. There are aspects that I don't like. I need to accept it and do it to the best of my ability. And the best of my ability means that I do really good work, or my quality is of a high standard. And as opposed to when my anxiety levels were high and I felt out of control and everything was all over the place, and my performance started dropping, over a period of 2 or 3 months, it was the opposite. My performance was drastically increasing and higher than I had performed before, because I made sure that I was doing what I needed to do in every aspect of the role, and I was doing it as well as I possibly could. Whether it meant going on training, whether it meant putting in extra hours, whether it meant speaking to different people and getting advice and putting my pride aside, I did it because I had to do it, and there was nothing that I could do. And when I got my performance appraisal later on that year, it was really, really good. And people had mentioned so many things about me that had nothing to do with my anxiety. So everything that I was doing was driven by my anxiety and the need to overcome it and make it work for me. But people started calling me a team player and reliable, and they went from being, oh, she's really nice and friendly and nice to work with, to she's amazing, she's open and she takes accountability for her work and she's trustworthy and she's always there, and so the adjectives got a bit better. And people started, aside from myself, people started noticing what I was actually capable of, and I started getting developed more and more and more because I was more open to it. So I wasn't letting the fear of not being able to do something, or the fear of not doing something well or not liking it, stop me from actually going and doing it. And I think that applies to all aspects of our lives, whether we're looking at relationships or children or family, friends, hobbies, whatever the case is. You can't let the fear of what if stop you from doing the what if. Right? Am I right? If that makes any sense. And over time, I've learned to reduce the anxiety to a well-functioning level, if I can put it at that. They say you have good stress and you have bad stress. You want to have a certain amount of good stress in your life to keep you stimulated and active and challenging. That's the same thing I did with my anxiety. I wanted a certain amount of anxiety that I could control to make sure that I was functioning at an optimal level. And my self-esteem and self-confidence started increasing, and my the waking up in the morning and going to work after a weekend was amazing, because I didn't think, oh, I hope nothing happened over the weekend that I now have to struggle with. Going to sleep at night was much easier. Staying asleep at night was much easier, and I was able to help other people as well, because I had been in this situation myself. So I could identify when somebody was anxious. There's little telltale signs. I've given you some of my symptoms, and I'm sure all the people I've spoken to, there's so many different types of symptoms that you experience. And when I have an anxiety trigger, when I see that little gremlin creeping up at the back of me, I put a stop to it immediately. I do not procrastinate. That was another thing that I was that was driving the anxiety, was procrastination. Well, if I don't deal with it now, it might go away. Or let me just deal with it a little bit later once I'm done doing this, and until eventually everything is piled up and you've got too many fires and not enough fire extinguishers, basically. So what I learned was all of those things, but I also learned that I am only capable of so much. There's everybody, on a genetic level, they say in terms of IQ, you have an IQ level and you can increase your EQ level, but your IQ level or your technical abilities are inherent and you can learn them. However, if you're not inclined to do so, you won't. And there's certain things that I'm not inclined to do. So I would be upfront about it. And sometimes if I was looking at a new job or a new place to go to, some of those things would be my make or break, because it was no use going into what I perceived as a better space. But out of 20 aspects of my job responsibilities, 15 of them were something that I hated to do. And I didn't want to get paid for working on things that I don't like doing and that I know I'm not going to be good at. So if it was two things, I'd be honest and tell my interviewer, my boss, listen, I'm not so great at this. I will try as much as possible, but I will be honest, and I'm not good at this. I'm not great at this. You're going to have to give me some support here. So I was really honest with myself and with the people that I worked with. And once I got feedback from those conversations, I realized that it's okay to feel like that. And I realized that everybody feels like that. And it doesn't put you in a space of weakness or incompetence. It actually makes you stronger, because now you are open to feedback firstly, and people can come to you and know that you are being honest with them and you are being honest with yourself. And lots of things that I thought I couldn't do, once I put away my anxiety and what was stopping me from doing it, I found out that it's okay, actually. I can do this. I can do it pretty well. I can do it quickly. I can do it accurately. I can do it with a fair amount of quality. And I can move on to the things that I actually like doing. And that is the crux of the matter. Now I function on a level of enjoyment. I love what I do. I love it every single day. It's been about 3 years since I had the Monday blues, or since I had to go to work after a holiday and feel dreadful about it. If my phone rings, my boss SMSs me or WhatsApps me or emails me at 10 o'clock at night, I'm not panicking. Either I deal with it then, or I'm asleep and I'll deal with it tomorrow. I am more understanding of what people go through around me, and I can see what triggers them. So I try to prevent them from reaching the stage that I was in. I'm able to coach and mentor better. When I'm standing in front of, as a soft skills facilitator, when I'm standing in front of a group of learners, I can tell them honestly by experience that this is what I felt. At one stage, I felt like I was going to die from something. And now I can't wait to get in there. Even if it is a project that gives me a little bit of concern, I know that I'm capable of doing it, because if I could overcome that, I could overcome anything. And that's the important thing, I think, about knowing your limits and knowing that that nothing can stop you. If you really are determined, nothing can stop you if you don't want it to. So that is my story about anxiety and how to make it work for you. I really hope that you take something from this. There's so many tools. The great thing about the internet and things like adminchat and Executive Secretary magazine is that there are so many people out there that have the same experiences as you. So if you'd like to chat to me about it, please feel free to do so. You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook, Always Be You, and on YouTube, Always Be You is my channel as well, where I speak about similar things. I'd love to hear what you think about it, and I really want to know if any of this has helped you. If you want any more tips, or if you need anything along similar lines, please feel free to share. And I'm so glad that I could be here in front of you today. Thank you for listening, and hope to see you soon.